Good morning. I'm Martin Hearn, Event Director of FutureBuild, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to day 2 of our FutureBuild conference. Today, we will be exploring the topic of changing and behaviour change. As we know, an urgent transition is required, but how can we make the necessary change? What does the transition involve? And how can we bring others along with us? To kick off the day, we have a very exciting keynote speaker lined up for you. Brussels is considered to be Europe's laboratory for sustainable construction, and our keynote speaker today is a driving force behind this development. For over a decade, passive construction standards have been mandatory in Brussels, and circularity is becoming the new normal. Policymakers and real estate developers are working hand in hand to set the bar in sustainable standards towards a new international level. And so our keynote speaker today is Pascal Smet. He is the Secretary of State for Brussels, the capital region responsible for urbanism and heritage, as well as European and international relations, foreign trade, and firefighting and emergency medical assistance. He has an impressive background in law, politics, and civil service, and has been a driving force behind the sustainable urban development in Brussels. So please give a warm welcome to Pascal Smet as he enthusiastically presents why Brussels and its companies are taking the lead role in future building construction. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the very nice introduction. Well, you know, Brussels, I know most of you probably are British, so Brussels for you many times will mean the capital of the European Union, but Brussels is much more than the capital of the European Union. We are a real city with real people living in there, and just to give you a few quick facts, because many people don't know what Brussels actually is. We are 1.2 million people living in Brussels, but we have 300,000 commuters every day coming into Brussels. We have also a lot of international people staying in Brussels and also a lot of people without documents staying in Brussels. So one basically can say that 1.6 million people will actively be present in the city on a daily basis. We are one of the 3 regions in Belgium, and in Belgium, as you might know, we are a very devolved country, which means that the regions have a lot of competences and that the national state has limited competence. And everything what's to do about building, everything what's to do about urbanism, everything what's to do about mobility, basically is a matter of the regional governments. Brussels, as I said, 1.2 million inhabitants. Brussels is 162 square kilometers, and it's composed of 19 municipalities, of which the city of Brussels is the most important one. Just to give you a quick few facts about Brussels, in case you didn't know it yet, but I guess you all know it, we are the capital of Europe. We are a city with a lot of diplomats, international people in there. We are the most international city of Europe, the second in the world after Dubai, and we are a city of minorities, which means that there is no dominant culture in Brussels, which makes it a city where we dare you to be yourself. And one could say that Brussels is perfectly imperfect. So that's what we are. Perfectly imperfect and probably very perfect for you to be there, to live there, to study there, and who knows, one day invest there. Just to give you another few key facts about our city is that in Brussels, housing, apartments and individual houses, we are much bigger than any other European city. Just to give you an idea, average people will have 100 square meters to live in. If you compare that to Paris, where it is 35, 40 square meters an apartment, in Brussels it's the double. And just to give you a little story, and it's true, but they're not invented, sometimes you have people from Paris, you know, that they want to buy an apartment in Brussels, and then they come in Brussels, and then they arrive with a kind of, like a suitcase with money in there, and they say, we're going to buy ourselves an apartment in Brussels, and in the evening they go back home with a whole building. because the price they thought they had to pay in Brussels for one apartment actually is the price for a whole building of high quality living place. So we have larger housing space than many, many, many other European cities. Second fact, good to know for the topic we're talking today, is that more than 2/3 of all the buildings in Brussels are constructed before the 80s, which means that we have a very old patrimonium. You know, it's pretty old, which means it needs to be a lot more insulated, it needs a lot of renovation, has to be done, and I'm coming back to that later. Another fact of Brussels, 40% of the people living in Brussels will own their own house, which is to Belgium standards very low. In Belgium, it's like 60, 80% of the people will own their own house or apartment, because every Belgian is born with a brick in his stomach, and it's something that is considered to be for your future retirement. You know, everybody wants to own his own house. In Brussels, it's less, but still it is 40%, and also compared to other cities, it's a lot. And many of the people who are low income people will own their own house too in Brussels. So that's another thing to keep in mind. I will be coming back to that later. And a fourth fact is that the renovation rate in Brussels compared to other cities is lower if you compare that to cities in other countries. I just quickly want to say that the last 15, 20 years, we have been making in Brussels a move, which we called Good Move. We are trying to change the city. It's one of our paradigm changes in Brussels, from a city for cars to a city for people. And I'm not going to explain a lot about it, but this is a Square Flagey. If you know Flagey in Brussels, for the one of you who have been in Brussels, it's a kind of meeting place for people working in the European Union institutions. It used to be a parking place. Now it's a place where people meet, people play, kids will play. And that's what we basically have done in Brussels. We made a lot of squares car-free. We reduced lanes. We demolished flyovers. We created a big pedestrian zone right in the center of Brussels. Imagine Oxford Street here with no longer cars. That's basically what we have done in Brussels. Only pedestrians and only cyclists, and it works very well. So we have been transforming the city, known as a city with a lot of traffic jams, like London, into a city much more for people, and we call it Good Move. But we think now there is another step to be taken. Good Move was on the mobility front. We have to go now to good living. And that's basically a new program that we are working on in Brussels on a double scale, a new building code, but at the same time also a new renovation, what we call Revolution. I'm coming back to that, rules in Brussels. And just to give you a quick idea, we are living in Brussels in 5 paradigm changes the last years, and still today and tomorrow going on. The first one, I said already to you, from a city for cars to a city for people. Secondly, from grey to green spaces. You know that in many cities, a little bit coming from France, it was a kind of fashion to create all these squares, a lot of mineralized, you know, not much green, not much parks. That has to change, and that's basically what we are doing now. We still make squares because a city needs squares, but at the same time, a city needs also much more greenery. So that's the second paradigm shift that we are doing. And of course, by doing that, we are tackling heat islands, we are tackling heat waves and things like that, but also the water management in a city in case of heavy rains. It's much easier when you have green space in a city. A third paradigm shift, and I'm coming back later and much more about it, is from demolition to renovation. You know that in Brussels, as I said, most of the buildings were built before the 80s. In that period, you know, when buildings, especially office buildings, were built, there was an idea that the life cycle has to be 20, 30, 40 years maximum, and then demolition, and then a new building being constructed, which is, of course, today, with the knowledge that we have, insane. But we still have buildings like that. And of course, developers, they try to come and say, we have to demolish that building. And then in the past, we say, okay, it's fine, just do it, build a new building. Today we are saying, and we're going to write it in our new building code, no, the rule is renovation, no demolition. That's the rule. Of course, there is an exception possible. If you can prove that demolition is absolutely necessary because you cannot transform the existing building, or you can show that on the long run it's better to do a new building, then we will still authorize demolition, but that will be exception. But I will explain that in a couple of minutes much more in detail. Then another paradigm change, the fourth one. You know, we have a lot of roofs in Brussels, and you would not say that Brussels is a rooftop city. That's about to change. The coming months and years, there will be a lot more public accessible rooftops coming in Brussels. But it's not about bars or restaurants. For us, it is also about green space, city space, and for instance, when there are new housing complexes built now in Brussels, we oblige the developers to build a kind of city garden on the roof for the people who live in the building. And we also oblige them now for every new apartment building needs a terrace, needs a balcony, needs a loggia. You know, COVID has shown how much free space, open air space is necessary. So the activation of the roofs, and of course still solar panels will be possible, but we really want to make it active so that activity can be done, but also like lawns, you know, just a sun lawn, to take some sun, and the sun shines in Brussels, by the way. So it is basically activation of the rooms. Another thing which is for us very important is that we want to go from monofunctional to multifunctional neighborhoods in the first place. We have the European district and the Northern district that's pretty monofunctional today. We want to be multifunctional, but also the buildings themselves have to be multifunctional. So no longer only office buildings. And a building should be offices, should be housing, could be a hotel too, and of course, other activities there. But explain me a little bit more about the demolition to renovation. I already said demolition is exception. And of course, we have a kind of criteria. We will look to the core of the building, the structure of the building, how is the light of the building going, how are the things looking, and on the basis of these criteria, we will see if it's possible, yes or no. And of course, the developer can say whatever he wants. What we are now doing is we hire experts to challenge what developers are saying. So they not only have to prove it to us, they have to convince official, technical engineer people who say, that's right what he is saying, or it's bullshit what he is saying, you know? So basically, we are challenging them, and we are changing their minds. And we already saved buildings, you know, that they came to us and they said, no, we have to demolish because it's not possible. And then we started the dialogue, and then at the end they say, oh yes, we're going to keep it. And then they are pretty happy that they kept it. And so it are the things that we basically are doing. If we allow demolition in Brussels, it's very important to know that they are obliged to reuse the material. So whether they have to reuse the material in their own new construction, or whether it goes to a material bank. You know, the urban mining bank. So we have a lot of banks where people will put all the old material. So the demolishing is not simply demolishing, putting a bomb on it, and then saying we are going to dump it somewhere. No, it is taking away piece by piece, putting in a bank, and reuse it and sell it to other people. And it works pretty well. So we have a lot of, you know, real circular construction going on right now in Brussels. You know, we had old buildings of banks that are demolished, and all the material is being reused, whether in the same building or in other buildings in Brussels, and it works very well. I'm going to show you a couple of examples so that it's not only blah, blah, blah that we want to do it, it's reality in the facts and life today in Brussels. I don't know if you know Turnen Taxis, which used to be the biggest European custom clearhouse on the continent in Brussels. It used to look like this, you know, it was an old place where nothing really was happening and it was empty, it was kind of dumb place. And then developers together with the government decided it has to be redeveloped, and it became this. And actually it is open today. This is Europe's biggest timber construction site. It's the biggest site in Europe where everything is done in wood, in timber. And it's pretty unique. It's a complex of offices, a complex of offices and also places where people can eat things, and it's much more livable now. It's like a covered place, and it is really getting developed right now. And it's not only this building, there are other buildings, there's a lot of housing coming on the side. And next time you're in Brussels, have a look over there, because it's pretty nice, the whole development. Another one I want to show is the Zin building. It's in the northern district of Brussels too, a very monofunctional district in Brussels, where everything what the city shouldn't do has been done in Brussels, so all ugly things. Monofunctional office buildings were there, only offices, you see it was looking like that, and it's going to be like this, a mixed building, completely multifunctional. There still will be offices, there will be a lot of housing, there will be a hotel, the Standard, you know the Standard I guess from here in London. They are coming to Brussels with a 2,000 square meter rooftop bar and restaurant. There will be a big greenhouse on the ground floor, so it is a really mixed thing. And all the material that was being torn down is now reused, whether in the building or in other buildings in Brussels. Another example, it's not called the Zin, it's our national telecom operator, Proximus. They have 2 towers. They wanted to leave the area. We convinced them to stay, and we said to them, okay, you need less office space. Instead of renovating the building in another office building, you're going to do something else. And that is what they are going to do. So the left will still be offices, the right will be completely housing, and the ground floor will be open to the public, will be auditorium, will be startup place, and will be much better connected with public space. And so this is a project that is being now in permit phase, so the permit will be delivered, and they will start in the coming 1 year, I guess, with the whole transformation. And again, you see all the new buildings have to respond to the highest standards. And as been said in the introduction, in Brussels we are very well connected on passive building since, I think, many years already now, nearly 15 years. We oblige all the big projects to be passive building, so we have a lot of experience over there. So it's all very low energy consumption. And most of the new buildings now will no longer use gas. They go to the heating in the ground, you know, or they take solar energy. So the whole thing is now completely different the way it is being done. So that's a couple of examples of a very important paradigm shift that we have in Brussels. No more demolition, but renovation. In case of demolition, you are going to reuse all the material. So that means the perfect form of the circular economy that is being, I would not say imposed to the construction sector, because they're very keen on it to work together. So one cannot say that we are in conflict or that they are unhappy with it. So they believe that and understand now that they have a kind of societal responsibility by building, and it's new for Brussels, because the promoters, developers in the past in Brussels, it was just about money, but now they think about, we have here an important role to play in developing the city, make the shape of the city, the look of the city, and they are playing the game. I said earlier that we have a lot of the housing, 40% in own hands of people, built before the 80s, which means that we have very much of a very bad condition of housing, and especially for people in lower income neighborhoods. This is not a lower income neighborhood of Brussels, of course, but sometimes they have to renovate too. And so we made a whole strategy, which is called the Renolution strategy. You know, understand it from evolution is there, but also revolution is there, and to renovate is in there. So renovation. It's a complete different mindset that has to come in Brussels, because for many houses, they are not insulated, there are problems with the roofs, there are problems with the windows, We have problems with the installation of the facade, so there is a lot of work to do, a very costly affair, a very timely affair that's going to happen the coming years, because of course we follow the all European Union directives, which means that in the coming years it has all to be neutral, greenhouse neutral, so a lot of investment is needed. What do we do with the renovation? Is a whole strategy, is informing people, helping people, but basically giving also financial incentives to renovate their housing by a system of premiums. But we do it now, but I'm immediately going to be very critical, because it is something that's very good for the well-informed, for already the ones who have money, for the well-connected, but those who are not well-connected, well-informed, they have difficulties to get access. Although we have associations and government agencies that will help people, that will advise them how to get these subsidies in order to renovate, but it's not enough. And so we are running to the limits of the system, because we have deadlines in 2030, 2040, 2050. And so what I personally think is that we have to change the system over there, no longer trying to renovate, make these renovations house by house and organized by every individual owner, because that will take too much time, it's too costly. I think we have to go on a neighborhood-based approach, which means that we say the whole neighborhood at once will be renovated. And we as a government, we will come, we will assist, we give you loans, rentless loans, if you can do it. And so we will organize it for you. I think this is something that will ask much more government intervention, but will be much more effective, will be much more efficient, and no longer the system that is serving and pleasing the well-connected, but not the ones who really need it. So this whole thing of incentives, it's necessary, but I think it's just an intermediary phase in going a more structural approach that we have to do. I want to make a comment over here. You know that we are living in very special times with the war in Ukraine, with all the prices of the construction going up 30%, energy prices exploding, the cost of living very complicated for a lot of people. And then we are saying, to these people, you have to renovate your house, you have to insulate it, and you have to do it. And if you don't do it, we will punish you. That's basically the message that many cities are sending out today. And at the same time, these same cities are saying, something, you have to get rid of your fuel-based car. You have to buy an electric car, and all that for 2030. But 2030 is in 7 years, and there is no second-hand market for electric cars. So basically we are saying to people, you have to spend a lot of money to renovate your house, you have to spend a lot of money to buy electric cars, and basically people don't have the money. So we are running into a social equity problem of a major challenge, and I think we are underestimating it, basically, that this could be a new fracture in society where the well-off, the bobos, the bourgeois bohème, I don't know if you say that in English, that for them it's all good, it's lovely, they live in nature, and they want to do things like that, but they forget that a lot of people, working people, out there can simply not afford it. And we have to keep them on board. So the whole way that we are organizing this is not right at this particular time. I think we have to change the way we approach it, and if we really mean what we are saying, well, then the whole way we organize it, as I said earlier, neighborhood-based, much more done by the government for people, rentless loans, things like that, is something that we have to do. And one of the incentives that we are taking to today in Brussels is, we don't have a cap on rent prices in Brussels. We don't have a political majority to do so, but we found a political majority to say that you no longer can indexate your rent price when your energy level is not good enough. So you can only increase the price of rent when the house that you rent is okay from an energy point of view. which is an incentive, because today with inflation pretty high, that means that you cannot raise your rent. So that's a very, well, I hope, effective incentive that we have introduced in Brussels too. And in the future, if you want to sell your house and it is not energy sufficient, of energy enough on the way of protecting it, well, then you simply cannot sell it, and then you have to do works on it. Of course, that's again a little bit complicated because you go to the pocket of the people, but it's something that we need to do. So basically, to resume, what we in Brussels are now doing is changing the way we deal with public space. We are in the process of redoing completely our building code. There's a lot of other things in there. To give you an example, it's not only about demolition and renovation, it's also about keeping 30% of a plot unbuilt. Of the 30% unbuilt, 70% has to be full ground, you know, that water can go in there. It is the quality of living is important. It's not deregulation, but we want to work much more with objectives, so that architects, that people who want to do things can come with new solutions, that we don't stick to solutions of the past. We want to continue, and we will continue with our passive building norms. By the way, the city of New York inspired his building code on the ones of Brussels, you know, and our little small city was very inspiring for the very big city on that. We are very leading now on the circular economy. We have a lot of companies here. Some of them are here today with us. And we want to continue in that way because we believe, as a capital of Europe, we have to show that we practice what we preach. Well, not us preach, because others preach in Brussels, but we have to do what they are preaching in our city. So basically, I think that's what I wanted to say. There are a lot of things going on. I would like to invite you to come to Brussels if you don't know it. You will find it an amazing city. Again, it's much more than dull bureaucrats. Most of the time they are not dull, by the way. They are quite fun. But there's a lot to discover. This year is the Art Nouveau year. You know, Art Nouveau is not Barcelona. Forget about Barcelona. Forget about Gaudi. It's wonderful, but Horta in Brussels is even better. So we have this year the Art Nouveau year in Brussels. And if you come, let the people of Hub know. We always can organize study visits, tours, and see projects, how things have been done. So you, for the ones who are British, you are still very welcome in Europe. And I'm pretty sure that one day we will be one big family again. So thank you very much. Yeah.